Let's watch Fox News liberal Jessica Tarlov on The Five having to talk with her MAGA co-host about the state of the election only 2 weeks out, as her co-hosts do their best propaganda pushing. So of course we have some fact checks lined up and some context to provide.
There was data that I saw today that I found really interesting, that the number one topic that Republicans are spending money on ads is about trans issues. So number 5 was the economy. Number 1, all of this anti-trans stuff where they're saying Kamala Harris is going to give sex changes to undocumented people in prison. And that doesn't seem like the strongest message to end on a national campaign.
This just shows how focused on the culture war issues MAGA is, the issues that they themselves create that typically don't really exist. Being that they're losing massively on policy, they have to find something to do. Trans people make up 0.5% of the population. The idea that a large constituency of voters is going to the booth based on trans issues is wild. Most people probably have never met a trans person or wouldn't know if they did, but Republicans don't have a foot to stand on when it comes to economic policy, when it comes to foreign relations, when it comes to what they're going to do. So instead they have to spend all this money in hopes that they strike fear and prey on people's bigotry, where rather than to have to answer for their own agenda or lack thereof, lack of policy, lack of success, they can then just point the finger at some scary made up bad guy that they're pretending represents the Democratic Party.
You can't even define fascism. I challenge Kamala to tell us what it is, because a majority of the country doesn't know the word. She needs non-college educated blacks, whites, and Hispanics to turn out for her. And she is smearing her rival as with a mid-20th century European political philosophy.
I'm sure that some random people might not be able to define fascism, but they know Hitler, they know Stalin, they know what fascism looks like, and they know that the people who represent it are bad people, and that if someone in America was embodying a lot of the elements that they had, especially that of the authoritarianism and dictatorial aspirations, they know enough to know that that is bad news and probably something they don't want. But for those who know what fascism is and how it's defined, you know, a political structure that puts race above the individual, that is headed by a dictator, that forces oppression or suppression, I should say, of their opposition. They know how Trump handedly fits into that mold. I mean, the literal first step that all fascists take, or that is always taken in fascism, is destroying the credibility of institutions so that they themselves can control the narrative. And Trump has done that with our courts, with our government, with our media, to where his followers now believe only what he says and nothing else. I mean, he's quite literally a textbook fascist.
As far as Kamala's finishing message, I think she has 2 audiences for it, and you're seeing these quite split. So she has the protecting democracy message, which she has to do to get those Republicans and right-leaning independents who don't like Donald Trump and are considering voting for her. And she did a lot of that in the town hall last night, was talking about that. That's where the fascism conversation comes in, talking about what Mark Milley said, what John Kelly said. You know, 40 of 44 cabinet secretaries that work for Donald Trump aren't backing him. And there were a number of big endorsements just out today. The Republican mayor of Waukesha, which is a GOP stronghold, 40-year GOP state senator, also from Wisconsin, and former GOP Congressman Fred Upton, coming out and saying, I've never voted for a Democrat in my life, but this is what we have to do now. And then the other closing message is for the rank and file Democrats, for people more like me. And that's going to be about reproductive rights, cost of living, talking about that Medicare proposal to expand coverage for people at home, aging people, protecting health care.
The final message to voters couldn't be easier to express and of a bigger contrast between the two. A vote for Harris is a vote for an economy where opportunity is presented to all, not concentrated to the top 10 and 1%, where money is directed to families through child tax credits, workers through earned income tax credits being expanded. Those wanting to buy a home can have assistance in doing so. Small businesses can have a help getting over that hump, where corporations are held accountable for preying on their customers through aggressive pricing practices. Those who need medicine in crucial moments can afford to get it. And medical debt isn't crippling so much of our middle class. It's a vote for hope and normalcy to return to politics and to turn the page on the divisiveness that Trump has caused the last 8 years, and to show them that this kind of activity has no place in the political sphere of the greatest country in the world. While a vote for Trump is a vote to anoint a king, who will rule above the law and punish those who dissent. It's a vote for hate and bigotry to become a permanent fixture in American politics, where the divide will become unfixable. It's a vote for a guy who talks about golfers' privates when he's not talking about the American Revolution being won by controlling airports. It's a vote for economic structures that will always favor the wealthy while keeping the poor poor and closing the door on the middle class from moving up themselves, for oppression of minority groups and for rights to be stripped away from women. I mean, a vote has never before carried as much weight as to the character of the person casting it as it has this year. And I just hope for our sake that the good guys win.